All right, so 2022 is just about to come to a close. So, with that, it is time to break down my list for my top 10 least favorite movies of 2022. I've seen just shy of 90 2022 releases, which is insane to me. And yeah, I've seen lots of movies. This list in particular was very difficult for me to make. The top 10 best was obviously, or not best, but my top 10 favorite was obviously still difficult to make. But I honestly feel like this one was harder, which, by the way, you can find my top 10 favorite movies of 2022 list on the channel. Should be the one right before this review. But yeah, let's not waste any time. Starting with 10 going to 1, 10 being not the worst, but still not great, and 1 being the worst, in my opinion at least. And before I get into the top 3, I will mention some dishonorable mentions, movies that, didn't quite make the list, but I thought should be mentioned. Starting with number 10, I have the Bob's Burgers movie. For me personally, I've never been someone who is a fan of the Bob's Burgers show. I watched the first season going into this film just for a little bit of context, and I didn't mind the show, to be honest. But when I got to the movie, it feels like the show, but an extended runtime, and it doesn't really feel like they had enough ideas for that extended runtime. Maybe for the fans of the show, it's all right. Maybe it's just since it's not for me, maybe that's why it's up further on this list. I give it the benefit of the doubt, but that being said, there is one person in particular who I know likes this show, who said they didn't really care for the movie. So who knows? Maybe Bob's Burgers fans do like this movie. That's why it's higher up on the list because, this maybe it's just not for me. Giving it the benefit of the doubt. That's why it's at number 10. But at number 9, I have Minions: The Rise of Gru. Another kind of case where maybe it's just not for me, so it's a little bit higher up on the list. But at the same time, I hate these freaking Minions movies. The first and second Despicable Me movies weren't horrible, but at this point, they are just milking it for everything that it's worth. And um, very forgettable movie, in my opinion. Kids will have fun with it. I'm sure kids love Minions. A lot of people love Minions, so that's why it's higher up on the list. But again, not for me. Something I would not rewatch. At number 8, I have Jurassic World Dominion. Uh, you know, Theoretically, the last movie in the Jurassic World franchise, Jurassic Park franchise. We'll see about that. I'm not holding my breath. But for it being the conclusion of this franchise, of this series, and bringing together the legendary characters as well as the new characters from the Jurassic World movies, this movie should have been a lot better than it was, and it should have focused more on the plot of, having dinosaurs living amongst humans that they set up in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which, didn't care for that movie, but I thought that idea was interesting. Instead, they really focused on this whole locust thing, and yeah, it was not the movie that people wanted. I think it's pretty forgettable, and that's very disappointing for something that brought in these legendary characters. Um, some people might like it. For me personally, I don't. That's why it's at number 8. We're kind of getting to that point where, you know, it might be for some people, but for the most part, I think a lot of people kind of agree with me on this stuff. Um, that being said, people might not agree with me with the stuff going forward. At number 7, I have Black Adam. I feel like this is a movie people are kind of either one of two ways on. They either love it or hate it. Actually, never mind. Honestly, I wouldn't say I completely hate this thing more than anything in the world. The thing that makes me not like this movie is just the way Dwayne Johnson was after this movie. I don't know if it was him personally or if it was his team. I don't know if he had any knowledge about it, or if it was actually him tweeting this stuff. But saying that the movie made more money than it did, and for a movie that was kind of just underwhelming, and hearing about that and just hearing how childish kind of Dwayne Johnson was about the whole situation, or at least seemingly so. It just kind of knocked this movie down a couple more levels for me. Probably would have been a little higher up had not the controversy happened. But yeah, that's why it's at number 7, really. Not the worst movie I've ever watched, but again, very forgettable, terrible villain in there. At number 6, I have Halloween Ends. Um, this is a movie maybe probably should have been a little bit higher up on the list, but I just had to take into account how much this movie pissed me off as a Michael Myers fan personally. This movie just did so many things wrong. It disrespected the character of Michael Myers. I get it. He's a slasher. He's a serial killer. You're not supposed to respect him, but at the same time, he's this legendary character. And for a movie that's essentially supposed to, like, Jurassic World Dominion, be the conclusion to the series, it's such a disappointing end that leaves me just scratching my head and wondering why they made the decisions that they did. Had this movie been, in the place of Halloween Kills, and Halloween Kills would have been the ending, I think it would have worked out better. But having this be, the conclusion to this Halloween trilogy that we had, very disappointing film. Definitely pissed the hell out. Definitely pissed the hell out of me. But yeah, number 5, I have Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank. Only reason this movie is on the list, I think children will enjoy this movie for the most part. It's not horrible, for kids, and there were even adults that were having way too much fun with it in the theater when I went to go see it. But I went to go see this movie for one reason in particular, and that's because I knew it would have to end up on this list. So I feel like if it didn't end up on the list, I would feel like I wasted my time. And there's actually another movie like that didn't end up on the list that I will mention in the dishonorable mentions in a minute here. But yeah, Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank has people like Michael Cera and Samuel L. Jackson. It's a Kung Fu Panda ripoff, and I don't know, it's one of those movies that have really great actors as the voice actors or whatever in the movie. Like, it has a really great voice cast, or it really just has a great cast in general, and you wonder why they agreed to do it. And then you start to realize they probably didn't agree to do it. They were probably contractually obligated to do it. And this movie just kind of feels like a contractual obligation to not only the actors to perform in, but for the audience to watch, or at least for me personally. This movie was nothing short of unbearable, but at the same time, it's not quite as bad as some of the other movies I've watched this year. And, again, kind of giving it some of the benefit of the doubt for it being a kid's film, maybe not being for me. Um, that's why it's not quite as low as maybe it should be for me personally. But yeah, Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank. Honestly, I wouldn't even recommend it for your children, but hey, if you want to watch, let them watch that. Depending on the age range, it'll probably be mind-numbing entertainment for them. But yeah, coming out at number 4, I have Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. The first Fantastic Beasts movie wasn't bad at all. Second one is where you really started to lose me. I hated that one. And with this one, I don't think I hated it as much as Crimes of Grindelwald, but at the same time, I barely remember anything that happens in the movie. It's incredibly forgettable. I really hope they don't make any more after this, because I do think it is kind of tarnishing the Harry Potter legacy. And, I don't really think they had a story quite worth telling in here, or at least, a story that they could tell well in the film. Um, but yeah, it was a really disappointing one, but at the same time, I really wasn't expecting much. So the fact that it's so low down on the list, I don't know, doesn't quite make sense. I should have expected it, but at the same time, me not being able to remember barely anything about it is never a good sign. But that being said, it's still not one of the worst movies I've seen this year. And we are about to go into the top 3 of my least favorite movies of 2022. So with that, I'm going to get into the dishonorable mentions. These are movies that didn't quite make the list, but I thought I should mention just before I get into the top 3. That one movie I was mentioning before that I basically just watched to be on this list is called Family Camp. It is a faith-based movie. It kind of has a similar plot to like Cheaper by the Dozen 2, the one with, you know who I'm talking about, the guy from Only Murders in the Building. Can't remember his name at the moment. Got to keep going. But yeah, there was only like one moment I laughed. The rest of it was just like watching people who thought they were really funny. But the reason why it didn't quite make the list is not only because it's a faith-based movie, and I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt for that reason, because I am not a very, very religious person. So maybe it's just not for me in that aspect, but also it's kind of a kid's movie. It's a low-budget movie. So, I feel like I can't trash on it too much as I already did, honestly. But yeah, I think there might be a review for that on the channel. I'm pretty sure. So you can go find that. But yeah, definitely not a great movie. 3,000 Years of Longing is one with, I think it's, excuse me, Tilda Swinton and, excuse me, always get hiccups when I'm trying to record. It's Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, and Idris Elba is essentially a genie in a bottle, and it should have been a lot better of a movie than it was. It was intriguing leading up to the ending, and then the way they decided to end the story is where it really lost me, and I don't know. I just don't like the direction they took the ending in. So that's a big reason why I just didn't like that movie very much. I think aside from that, it did some very interesting things, but didn't quite make this list, so it wasn't quite as horrible as some of the other stuff on here. Then we have Memory, which is a Liam Neeson movie. I feel like there's always one Liam Neeson movie that comes out a year, every year that nobody watches, and this is one of them. And it's funny that it's called Memory because I honestly don't even remember anything about this movie. I think Guy Pearce might be in the film, but that's about all I got for you. Also on the list, Terrifier 2. This is a movie I really wish I would have liked. The first one was pretty good. I liked how it stayed realistic for the most part up until the end. With this movie, it took a lot more fantastical kind of fantasy, more, science fiction, supernatural elements. And with the low budget that they have, when they try to do those types of things, it doesn't quite work as well. And I mean, the gore isn't something that bothers me personally. I wasn't throwing up, I wasn't passing out or anything. Especially since I had watched that first movie, I was kind of, I knew what to expect going into it. I knew it was probably going to be a lot crazier, but still, yeah, just the direction they took with the character, and then honestly, it feels like a middle chapter because it doesn't really have a conclusive ending to it, but it's a much longer movie than it needs to be as well. So didn't quite make the list because again it's kind of a lower budget film. I still have respect for it. I think Art the Clown is one of the best new slashers. So I have a lot of respect for both movies, and that's one of the reasons at least why I didn't make it on the list. Next up is The Invitation. Honestly, this is one of those that could have easily made the list, but just didn't. I think it probably could have replaced the Bob's Burgers movie, possibly, but at some point I just had to say, all right, I have a full list. I just have to stick with the list I have now, or else I'm just going to keep remaking it. But yeah, The Invitation is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a vampire, like almost fan fiction kind of movie. It feels like a Wattpad, fan fiction story about vampires. It's not good. Don't waste your time, but if you like that kind of shit, go ahead. What else on here? All right, this might be a controversial take, but The Woman King has like a really great review on or like really great score on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people are praising it. There's a couple people that I watched that, kind of saw through it, I guess, or just didn't like it. It's one of our former President Obama's favorite movies. I saw that list on Facebook. Also, Everything Everywhere on that list, which, same, but hilarious to see that Barack Obama loved that movie just as much as me. But yeah, The Woman King is one that just, I never really understood the hype around, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying have anything against women. I'm not saying I have anything against black people. I'm not saying I have anything against black women or men or anything like that. It's just a really underwhelming movie that just, I don't really understand why people are praising it so much. I mean, it looks good and some of the action is pretty good, but aside from that, I just didn't care too much about anything else. I mean, some of the acting I would say is pretty good too, but I mean, other than that, it just doesn't really stand out in terms of the story overall. And it's hard when it comes to stories based on a true story, or like movies based on a true story, I should say, to like really critique that kind of stuff. So I think that is one of the big reasons it's not on the list. But I don't think it's an awful movie. I just one of those movies I don't understand the hype around. But yeah, also on the list is The Northman. Only reason this is on the dishonorable mentions list, really in this least favorite list at all, is just because I simply don't like these types of movies. I think The Green Knight was probably a great movie, but I just didn't didn't really care for it when I was watching it. I tried to watch what was it called? The Last Duel. I tried watching that so many times. I got to a certain point and I was just like, I can't get into it. I don't know if it's just that kind of fantasy aspects, the knight medieval kind of stuff. I think so. I don't know. I like Game of Thrones, but that had a lot of like fantasy kind of sci-fi aspects with it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just not into those types of movies, but The Northman was also one that I just didn't really care too much for. Excuse me, sorry. And I'm gonna say this: I didn't love Avatar 2 as much as everybody else. I don't think it's a horrible movie, but me not really liking the first one very much. I would actually say I kind of like the first one a little bit better than the second one. Second one, I'm just not into it. It's not my lore. It's not the stuff that I'm interested in. And sometimes stuff comes around like, The Northman, like Avatar 2 that just don't pique my interest. They for whatever reason, as much as everybody else likes them, just not for me. But I think that's about enough of my dishonorable mentions. Let's get into the top 3 of my least favorite movies of 2022. Starting with number 3, I have Uncharted. Uncharted is a game that I never really played. I've seen some gameplay and whatnot, and I've known for a long time that people have wanted Nathan Fillion to play Nathan Drake, and I think he would still be perfect even though he is older. I don't like the whole casting decision of Tom Holland as Nathan Drake, and I especially don't like the casting decision as Mark Wahlberg as Sully. Um, these are characters I'm not attached to, but when I see the potential for who these characters could have been played by, and especially just like it's a Sony movie, or at least I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's a Sony movie, and they do their typical Sony things, and it has some really stupid writing in there, like things that don't make sense at all, and it's just one of those movies that I do not feel like rewatching. It has some decent action, but for the most part, it feels miscasted. It feels poorly written, and yeah, just very very underwhelming movie for something that could have had a lot more potential. Number 2, 2 and 1 are kind of weird. People would assume 2 would be in 1, 1 would be in 2, but at number 2 I have Morbius, another Sony movie. This movie is awful. Don't get me wrong, I fucking hate this movie. Sorry for swearing in this. I was trying not to swear in this, but Morbius is a terrible movie. But the only reason it's not at number 1 is because, as opposed to my number 1, this is a movie I would probably rewatch at least one more time just for a review, maybe again in the future for the meme of it, because it is something to laugh at. There is a there is a meme aspect to come out of this movie that I can appreciate, like the whole "it's Morbin time" thing. Like there's plenty of memes to come from this movie, and that, for that reason alone, that is the only reason why this movie didn't make the number 1. And I'm sure you're all wondering, what the heck is that your number 1? Well, it is Pinocchio. And no, not Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. It is the Disney live action Pinocchio. I don't think I've seen a movie in so long that felt this soulless, felt just like a blatant cash grab. There's like little Easter eggs to little other Disney things, but at the end of the day, it just feels like, hey, give us more of your money. Give us more of your money. Look at these other properties. Look at the other properties. And, the voice work for the most part isn't horrible. I like Tom Hanks as Geppetto. But when it comes down to it, this movie just has no soul. Pinocchio may have no strings, but this movie has no soul. I don't think I've ever been so just disgusted watching a movie that I should be just in love with. You have really great voice talent there too, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Geppetto. And then I could be wrong. I forget exactly who's playing Pinocchio, the voice of Pinocchio, but again, like a lot of great voice work there. And it's been quite a long time since I've seen the original Pinocchio. But I feel like there are some things that are different, and the things that are different do not work for me personally. Who is this directed by? What is it, like Robert Zemeckis? I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below, but whoever did it just did not do it right. And honestly, when it comes down to it, they really just should stop doing these live action movies. I'm really worried about that live action Lilo and Stitch one because personally, Lilo and Stitch is one of my favorite Disney movies. But yeah, Pinocchio, one of the most soulless movies I've ever watched, or at least one of the most soulless movies I've watched in a very long time. Um, and I'm surprised that it actually beat Morbius as one of my least favorite movies of 2022. But yeah, there you go. There is my list of my top 10 least favorite movies of 2022. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see your guys' list down below, even if it isn't a full top 10, maybe like a top 5 or something like that. Also, go over and check out the top 10 favorites of 2022 video. And go check that one out and comment down below and tell me what your favorites are over there. But yeah, it's been a pretty great year for movies. I've seen, again, I think I said this in the beginning, but just shy of 90 movies, which is absolutely insane. That's just counting the 2022 releases. But yeah, lots of great ones, lots of great ones for sure. But lots of kind of not great, kind of crappy, and also pretty meh ones. I would say there's probably a lot more meh movies than good and bad, but yeah, I mean, I was thinking of doing like a top 10 most meh movies of 2022, but I don't really see the point in that. I am possibly thinking of shoehorning in a top 10 favorite and least favorites shows of 2022. Might possibly do that, but I also kind of want to watch Andor before I do that. Don't think I'll have time to watch, House of the Dragon or Rings of Power, but Andor is the one at least that I need to watch because I'm pretty sure that'll make my top 5 favorites of 2022 for TV shows. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video here. Thank you all very much for watching. And if you're watching in the new year, Happy New Year, Happy 2023. Yeah, we'll get right on to the new movies as soon as they start coming out. I'm sure, Megan's coming out soon. There's the Otto one with Tom Hanks. Speaking of Tom Hanks, Pinocchio. And then there was one other one that I cannot remember at the moment, but there's a lot of really great movies coming out in 2023 that I cannot wait to review. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of bad ones that'll end up on that least favorite list. But yeah, as for this year, that is it. Thank you all very much for watching Film Punch. And yeah, if you're watching on December 31st, I will see you next year. See you later.